In parenting, how to get your kids to bed without drama every night, whether it's tears at bedtime or yo-yoing from their bed to yours through the night. Getting nighttime sorted is pretty important to many parents. Michelle Mitchell is a parenting educator, author of a number of books and an award-winning speaker. She says sleep is the cornerstone of kids' and adults' health. And she has some practical strategies to take the battle out of bedtime. Questions to 2101 by text or email 9to noon at rnz.co.nz. Michelle, welcome back to 9to noon. Great to have you with us.
It's so lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, that question of sleep, it's part of parenting that you go without a fair bit of it. But for both you and your child and children, just how important to make it as good as you can get it?
It's so important. And I think one of the myths that we've got is we just send kids to bed because, they're sleepy. But it's so much more than that. Like their brain is actually enhanced because they sleep. When they sleep, their brain clears out the toxins, it resets their ability to think clearly, to regulate their emotions and learn for the next day. So it's just so essential. So if you think of two kids going to school the next day, one who's got a tricky maths problem falls apart and the other one's got just that little bit more resilience to get through it. It's that critical for our kids.
What are some of the basics in terms of their sleep pattern? There's been a lot of discussion about us forcing teenagers out of bed too early in the mornings, for example. But what are the
We can
typical...
get to that one.
We can. What about some of the typical sleep patterns that hopefully a child will go through during various development stages?
Well, there's maybe recommended amounts of sleep we can talk about, but there's so much new research about sleep that's fascinating. But look, preschool age kids need 10 to 13 hours sleep per 24 hours. And I think one of the big myths that's being busted is that kids need to sleep in one big hit. Napping is actually really important and adds up for kids. School age kids, it's like 9 to 12 hours, and teenage kids, they still need 8 to 10 hours per night. And 70% of our kids are not getting that. I think one of the things we can really help our kids do is check in with their own body, though. What does it feel like to be well rested? What do they feel like when they're functioning really well the next day? And many kids fight this sense of going to sleep. And I think they're fighting this sense of letting go of what could be fun, what could be interesting to do, and even letting go of like their relationship with us and being close to us, especially when they're young.
What are some of the reasons there are challenges around sleep? And again, pick various ages as you go. A little bit like
Yeah, okay.
food, can there be bedtime or sleep
Yeah.
aversion?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So there's biological, cognitive, and emotional changes that kids go through in each stage of development. So if you think of preschool age kids, the most common things that kids going through at that age is night terrors and nightmares and like bedtime stalling because they don't want to let go of you. So there's a lot of like that monsters in the dark and being afraid of something under your bed or behind the curtain. So those type of things are things that parents are facing. When they're in primary school, there's a lot more anxiety around schoolwork and friendships and inconsistent routines. That's a really big one at that age. And then adolescence, their whole body clock changes. So this is an issue in itself. They have a biological shift. So their melatonin that helps them go to bed actually starts to kick in 1 to 2 hours later than it normally did, which means they look like they've had an espresso at 8:30 at night. And they're not being difficult. It's literally their body clock changing. But they still have to get up at the same time every morning. So they acquire this sleep debt and they can be really grumpy and really difficult. But, their body clock's just not adjusting to the way, adult bodies are working at that stage.
Are kids divided into sort of night owls and larks just as humans can be?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure about the research in that, but I'm sure they are. Like, I know one of my kids was always a morning person. I don't know your experience of this, and then the other one was just always geared for late at night. So I'm actually not sure of the research of
Mm.
that, but I do feel like the routines in our home really set our kids up well for their sleep patterns. And one of the biggest things is just making sure that regardless what time they go to sleep, they have the same wake up time every morning and getting light first thing in the morning is one of the biggest things that set their body clock. I know it sounds crazy, but just being able to draw the curtains, to get light in their eyes, actually helps them fall asleep or feel sleepy at the same time every
We
night.
know these light receptors, they're fairly recently discovered actually, the light receptors in the eyes that control the circadian rhythm. It's quite remarkable science still developing. But that literally gives you permission as a parent. If you're going to go in, not necessarily throw your teen out of bed, you're allowed to pull the curtains.
That's right. There's actually teen sleep centres now. Can you believe this?
Mm.
So, and part of what they do is help get light into kids' eyes. Once they've caught up on that sleep debt, though, I think that's really important to notice because kids can acquire this sleep debt during the week because they're literally got early morning sports practices and maybe they've got to travel a long way to school. But then they get to the weekend and parents are like, right, you lazy thing, you're getting out of bed, up and go. But they're exhausted. And I think the best thing we can let them do on the weekends is sleep and catch up with themselves. Then from that point, get that light in their eyes for routine.
What about the other end of the day, where, again, I'm a fan of a light dimmer, anything that starts to tell my brain that it's getting ready for sleep? Can you do similar things with kids? And, of course, we'll talk about what to do with those phones and when.
Yeah, look, I think you've just hit the nail on the head with that. The overlight light, like the, fluorescent kind of overhead lighting that we have is not great. So if we can have lamp light, that really helps. I mean, blue light is like this extra added, fancy bonus, but most of us don't have that. So dimming the lights is fantastic. So the idea that once the sun goes down, that our lights go down in our home is really great. The idea that you have a bath or a shower before bed is a myth that's actually getting challenged now because what it's doing is heating our kids' bodies up, and our kids' bodies need to cool down before they go to bed. So, getting them to have a bath earlier and recognizing that their bodies need to drop 1 or 2 degrees in temperature. So, particularly for teenagers and teenage boys, if they have a cool room when they go to bed, it's going to help them go to bed or go to sleep. Things like weighted blankets are really interesting as well as important. And also, like, the milk and cookies, Claire, the old grandma's remedy, milk and cookies. Carbs before you go to bed help slow your metabolism down. So if you've got a kid who's really restless and just can't go to sleep, it's actually something that I would recommend that families go towards.
Let's talk about the younger kids and their routines. There's all sorts of things going on there. Some, as we mentioned, have got if they don't have the sort of if they're beyond the old monsters under the bed stage, it is a time in bed where all of us confront what we haven't confronted during the day. So whether it's that kind of aversion, some kids are just curious and they want to want to keep going. What are the routines you can bring to play that deal to what might be, shall we say, bedtime reluctance?
Yeah, I think what parents don't realize is that talking can be overrated at that time of night because what kids' brains tend to do is start looping. So they move from uh, debriefing or unpacking their day to ruminating and looping. So if they're unpacking a friendship drama, it can very quickly tip into worry. And that's what I want parents to recognize is sometimes the end of the day is where kids feel vulnerable and they open up when they haven't had access to us earlier in the day. So I like to think of that last maybe half an hour when you're alone with your child in bed. If that's the only time when they've got your attention and your undivided attention, and it's the only time they're opening up to you, that can actually be a time where they start looping and worrying. So, making an earlier time in the evening where they can spend time with you to worry about their day with you, but then spending that last time of night that's more gratitude based, that's more maybe reading stories, that's enjoying that time together. And you have that, you know that it's half an hour together, you know how many storybooks that you read together, and you have like this routine handshake or this routine cut off thing that you do, and then you sort of leave. And I've always said to my boys when they were younger, it's not my job to fall asleep for you. I can't do that for you, but I'm going to love you, say good night, and I'll come and check in on you later. And that's when they were struggling to sleep.
Is there a ritual? Is there a classic go and get your PJs, then we'll have a book, then we'll do this, then we'll do this, particularly with younger children?
Definitely. And I think every child is different. And I think families need to be free to develop their own rituals. I don't think parenting educators like me can, serve that up on a platter because every family is different. Some families are shift work and some families are ringing, dads who are, working away before they go to bed. But, I think, yeah, it is like that. Just like you have that before you go to school, you have these, five things that you've got to do. Kids thrive on routine. So if they can have their bath, 2 hours before they go to bed, some parents like the nighttime snack, and some parents like to close the kitchen, whatever works for you. But some type of connection, and then some type of alone time where kids are letting go of that connection and spending time connecting with themselves, and then lights out. So it's that close connection, time with yourself, lights out. I like that type of rhythm.
Lots of questions coming in. Before we get to them, though, bed hopping, there's the kid who just loves to sleep with mum and dad, or mum and mum,
Yeah.
or just mum, or
Yeah.
just dad. What do you
Yeah.
do when you've got a little one who wants to come and stay in bed? When are they allowed? When are they not allowed?
I was that kid. I was that child. And I have right frontal lobe epilepsy, Claire. So now I know why I was that child. So I think what's really hard about this question is there's a reason why kids do this. And I think if we're really hard and fast and we say kids back to bed, that's it, we might discover in 10 or 20 or 30 years' time there was a reason why kids were doing that. What my parents were very gracious and did is put a little mattress on the floor that I could come and sleep on. Now, this is going to be different for every family, and I think we need to first stop and ask ourselves why. And if kids are that anxious that they're needing to sleep next to their parents, I personally feel like kids need to be considered within it, but so do parents sleep. So we need to get a compromise that works well. No one works well when they don't sleep, parents or kids.
Okay, let's get to some of the questions. And interestingly, napping is raised. Obviously, it's part of the life of a very young child because it's interesting how you define it, but they sleep regularly for shorter amounts of time. As you say, this idea that there's this magical, big, long, unbroken sleep, it's not really that for any of us. But can we talk
No,
about napping and typically when it can be useful, even for, say, the teens, and when it's really
absolutely.
not useful?
This is a great question because teenagers tell me they come home from school and they're so exhausted that they just take a 30-minute nap. Like they're just done. They don't want to talk, they don't want to debrief with anyone. They just crash. And they might not look like they're fully asleep. And this is the interesting thing about sleep. There's different cycles and different stages of sleep, but kids can actually semi-sleep, let's call it that, or get into a bit of a
Snooze.
uh, yeah, let's
That
let's call it a
lovely
snooze.
sensation where you're
Meditation.
kind of aware of your surroundings, but you're not really there. You're in the land of nod at the same time. You're speaking to a fan of
I
the
love the
power now, I
land of
can tell you.
Nod. Well, yeah. That refreshes them. And I think we should encourage kids to have these short naps. Now, because our sleep cycles are about an hour and a half, they do recommend napping be under an hour. But I wouldn't recommend waking up a teenager. Like, you can try if you want to, but, if kids need to nap, I'd say let them nap
I used to
because
use it
it is a
studying,
part of the
Michelle,
sleep.
interestingly. When I had
Yeah.
that complete information overload, I'd go and have, I think 30 minutes is the magic time. And you could
Yeah, it
almost,
is.
how when you're falling asleep, there's just crazy stuff whizzing around your head. It's like someone's putting everything in the appropriate filing cabinet. And then
Mm,
wake up and I'd be able to good to go again. The thing is with napping, is there a risk if you go too long that you go into those deeper cycles of sleep and then you're mucked up?
that's it. And you can have this agreement, especially around exam time with teenagers, that you'll wake them up in like under an hour it is. So, like, say 40 minutes, perfect time for napping. So just let them have that short little snooze, wake them up with something happy, light music, let them just come back to reality slowly and a little bit of a snack and get going. And the perfect thing, Claire, is go from napping to a little bit of exercise. Makes them feel like magic.
Very good. Perhaps you're going to catch your nap at the same time. Questions? Any tips for a 5-year-old who wakes up every morning at 5:45 a.m. yelling, "I want to get up," to try and get him to stay in bed till 6:15 when his glow clock changes colour? It's so draining to be fighting for the moment we wake up. Who's going to win this one, please?
Oh my gosh. Look, as a mum now of 26 and 24-year-olds, some of those moments are my best memories. And didn't you read that question, Claire, with just like this beautiful, like, giggle and laugh? And even the way that mum wrote that question, there's just that sort of love about it. Because even though it's the most frustrating, exhausting, draining part of our life, it is also like there's joy in it as well. I used to have toys in my room that my kids would come in and play with, so I could sort of still rest during that period. And I don't know if this helped that mum or not, but that's how I handled it because I wanted to stay in bed for as long as I could, and my kids wanted to go.
Very good. So it's sort of a halfway house. If they've got something to occupy them, if
Oh,
they've got
that's
someone
what.
something to occupy them, that might be the deal. Now, this one, our 18-month-old doesn't go to sleep until 9 or 9:30 p.m. no matter what time or how long his afternoon nap is. His dad doesn't
Yeah.
get home from work till 7 p.m. Could he be getting a
Yeah.
second wind and that's
Yes.
contributing to his late bedtime? Weekends are hard to judge as we're
Yeah.
usually out and about a day or an evening.
Yeah. So maybe waiting for dad to get home and have some time with dad. And is that Claire? Am I hearing and reading that right?
I think that's what the implication is.
Oh, okay. So my mother heart goes two ways. I feel for this mum because she's like, I want my husband for a minute. And then I'm listening to the possibility and the potential for this family to treasure this hour and a half together as a family and say, this child is waiting up for daddy to get home. And
I
how
don't
can you
even
make,
think she's saying that it is
okay.
necessarily perturbing her. She's just interested as if this is why it's so late for him
Yes.
going to bed. It kind of makes sense. This is playtime. This is fun time. This is want to be with dad time. Yeah.
I'd say this mum is spot on. And I've heard grandparents talk about this in reflection of their children many, many times. I don't have research to back this one up, but this is something that parents commonly talk to me about. So I would say this is exactly what I would be embracing as a family. Make it as fun as you want to, but it's also got to be wind down time, doesn't it? Otherwise, you're never going to get this little one to bed and to spend time with your own husband. So,
What do you
it's
make
all
of
juggle.
a couple of questions coming in about sleep support? And I know this is an area of considerable contention. Usefulness of serotonin and or
Yeah.
melatonin.
Yeah. Look, in my work, I had a psychology clinic, Claire, and I had 12 staff there, and some of them did specialize in this area. I am not a clinician myself, and this is something you always discuss with a doctor, and dosage, timing, duration, all of that stuff is important. But melatonin is just a hormone that helps regulate the sleep-wake cycle. It's something that's normally used short term and it helps, get kids regulated with their cycle again. It's sometimes used for kids who've got neurodiversity, ADHD, autism, for travel, jet lag. It's not a sleeping pill, but I've seen it being incredibly helpful for families. Valerian is another one, magnesium, chamomile, lavender. There's all sorts of different herbal remedies as well that can be used. So I wouldn't rule these things out, and they can be very helpful.
All right, and one more though. I'm always a bit more wary about these. There's a calm carry device that taps on the palm, advertised on Facebook. I've just had a quick Google and it's advertised. Uh, I don't know these sorts of
No
devices.
idea.
It's funny.
I'm not going to comment.
It's funny. You can have your little patterns, can't you? I suppose
You
your little things
can.
that might work for you or be a signal. But
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd be paying anywhere from $25 14 to $95 for one. You know,
Well, if you think about
make
patting
up
a
your
baby
own
to
one.
sleep,
Yeah.
I guess you've got rhythm there. I guess they're
Mm,
tapping into rhythm. I think with children, there's probably a better way to give your children rhythm than a device. How
yeah.
about we go with that? Is that a good idea?
It's got some microcurrent though. No, look, I just think any little pattern or symbol or trigger. But yeah, that's our hot reckons on that one. Michelle, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. Michelle Mitchell, who is a parenting expert and educator, author of a number of books, also an award-winning speaker. The Claire who was ever present through our conversation there is my producer colleague Claire. So that happens from time to time, and fair enough. They do all the work after all.